tested and perfected to be our strongest oil. Castrol Edge. Now with titanium fluid strength technology. It's more than just oil, it's liquid engineering.
Michael Vick, no hesitation in taking his shirt off. Will Leitch, he'd like to be able to do that at a gas station. Thank God he doesn't. Hi, I'm Center Sports' Noah Kozlov, catching up with sporting news columnist and the author of the most recent Michael Vick article in GQ magazine. You can check it out online right now in GQ.com. And, well, thanks for keeping your shirt on.
Of course. It's always my pleasure.
And it's really, trust me, it's greatly appreciated for everybody. Take me through the article, and after you wrote it, what did you think would be the biggest story to come out of it?
Well, certainly, I talked to Vic a couple times in June for an extended period of time, and then I saw him speak to a school, and I certainly had, I think, I was fortunate enough to have somewhat rare access with him. And it's interesting, I think that there is this idea for a long time that every time you saw Vic in the public eye, particularly because the NFL has helmets on all of its players, every time you saw him in the public eye, he always looked so sad. He always looked very sorry. And that was smart. Like, that was a smart thing for him to do. He had to get back to the NFL. But, you don't become Michael Vick by being this guy that's constantly hanging your head. And I think that one thing I definitely found, and I actually don't have a problem with this, I know there are some people that do, I found him to be cocky and confident and pretty much living his life the way that someone that has otherworldly athletic talent should. I found him particularly honest as he could be, considering where he was a year ago. To be entirely honest, I assumed that there'd be a reaction to the dog stuff, but I actually found it quite honest. Certainly this is not a guy that's going to go out and start a dog fighting ring again. And I thought there was, that was one question I really wanted to ask him going into the interview was, hey, you've had dogs your entire life. You didn't murder every single one of them. Do you miss dogs? And he said, yeah, I do. I do miss dogs. My kids miss dogs.
Were you surprised that he was willing to talk about dogfighting? Did he seem annoyed that he was asked about dogfighting, or is this just now part of his routine?
I think he knew it was going to come up. He's not a dumb guy. Certainly he knows that you can't exactly sit down for a couple extended interviews and expect the person you're talking to not to bring up the dog stuff. Certainly it wasn't the sole centerpiece of our conversation. We talked about a lot of things. Certainly dogs had to be a part of that conversation, and he was ready for it, and I think if there's anything he wasn't prepared for, and I think he was actually still prepared for this, was the idea that, the theme of the story is less about the dogfighting and less about the Eagles and more about how I think among media narratives we feel comforted by the rags to redemption type of narrative. That to me is more interesting than kind of this he overcame adversity that you usually kind of see in a lot of these stories.
Because it seemed from the article that he was turning his life around before he went to prison, that it wasn't prison that turned his life around, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on the football side, did you get the sense that he wanted to come to Philadelphia, that that's where he wanted to be out of prison?
I don't think it's so much that he didn't want to go to Philadelphia, which, by the way, I love the irony that, Philadelphia, the toughest sports city in the world, loves perhaps the most hated athlete in sports, which is always kind of a fun thing. I just think he didn't want to be third string. Certainly, the idea of people forget now that he spent a year on the bench most of the time, and even going into the year his breakthrough season, he was still a backup. It's one thing to say, hey, you should be just happy to be in football, but Michael Vick is, he knows what he can do. But obviously, it turned out to be the perfect situation for him.
Any future Leitches, I shouldn't even say that, future children of yours, would you want them looking up to Michael Vick? Would it be okay if they said, that's my hero, that's my idol?
I wouldn't want any of my kids looking up to any athlete because I don't know them. Okay. That's always seemed like a strange thing that we encourage our kids to idolize people that we know nothing about. To me, I hope they root for. I hope the young Leitches root for the Arizona Cardinals and the St. Louis Cardinals and not the Philadelphia Eagles. But certainly, the idea of I've never quite understood the notion of using using athletes as some sort of paragon of virtue because they can run really fast. It's always seemed very odd to me. So no, I wouldn't do that, but I wouldn't do that if he were Joe Montana either.
Got it. Will Leitch, sporting news columnist and the author of the latest Michael Vick feature in GQ magazine. You can pick it up on newsstands coming up, and you see it online as well. Will, always good talking to you. Thanks so much.